Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this very chilly morning in Davos. I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet because we're running a little bit behind, and I'm sure we'd very much like to hear from our fascinating speakers. And of course, we encourage you as our guests to engage with the panel and the discussion. It's been an honor and a privilege for Misk to be here in Davos, the second year running, to stand with so many great world leaders, innovators, change makers, and to discuss the challenges and grasp the opportunities of globalization 4.0. My name is Shayma Hamid-Ad-Din. I am the executive manager of the Misk Global Forum. And I'm so proud to be representing my team, Misk, all the way from Saudi Arabia here today. So just to give you a little brief about what we're doing this morning and what we'll be talking about. Of course, there are no doubts in anyone's minds that globalization 4.0 and the fourth industrial revolution, of which it is part, are pressing issues indeed, partly because it impacts almost every sector: economics, politics, culture, environment, and even health, and partly because no generation, no demographic, no region, no continent will go unaffected by these changes. So at Misk, we are committed to making sure young people have the skills and experiences that match their ideals and ambitions, and ensuring that they are prepared for the future economy. Because when we talk about the future, and when we talk about fourth industrial revolution, and when we talk about the economy of tomorrow, we are essentially talking about young people, not as a problem to be solved, but as problem solvers. Our Global Youth Index has shown that young people are very optimistic about the future. They recognize that our challenge is ahead, but they also recognize that they can come up with solutions for these challenges. And this is just, and we hope the debate today will illuminate some of these, will illuminate the generation that is kind of revealing itself towards us today. So I'm not going to keep you waiting, because we want to keep this, open up this discussion. I'd like to welcome our speakers. Our lovely moderator, Edie Lush, the Executive Director of Hub Culture, will make the introduction, and we hope you have a great session. And please enjoy the breakfast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me, and great to see you guys all today. This is my second interaction with the Misk Global Forum. I was delighted to be in Saudi Arabia at the end of last year. I will say it was a little bit warmer then than it is today. I want to remind everyone about the topic that we're talking about today, how young people can shape a better world. So while we know there is a lot of negativity around, I want this discussion to be positive and about solutions while being realistic. Again, I'm the executive editor of Hub Culture. I also have a podcast called Global Goals Cast, which is all about the champions of people who are helping to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So, the future of work is at the heart of every major socio-economic political debate raging around the world today. Whether we're talking about walls across borders, migrants landing on the southern beaches of Europe, surveillance policies in China, hard or soft Brexits, where I live in the UK, or the concentration of wealth amongst the 1%. That was what kicked Davos off this week. Rooted in this topic of the nature of work. And that is because from work and what's derived from it, money, comes power. And with its absence, I believe, comes powerlessness. And that is absolutely true in 2019, even more, because everyone understands that work is changing more quickly than ever before. Given that the stakes are so high, I think that's what makes the arguments even more tense. And we also have the broad spectrum of technology opening up in front of us. Cognizant calls it a digital prairie, full of brilliant people solving unimaginably hard problems with clever technologies that are getting smarter and smarter every day. Now, of course, sometimes we can get excited about this future. We have to be aware that many people are not excited. They are scared and afraid. Worried about what little grip they have at the moment on that ladder could very well slip. Now, we heard about the optimism that young people have. And it's really important to remember that young people outside of Europe and America are the people that we need to focus on, because 90% of these future leaders live in developing countries. So, topics for discussion today include: how can the youth get better access to employment? How do we prepare young people for the future of work? What works, what doesn't, and what are the world's best practices? And how can young people effectively participate in shaping this new globalization, fairer and more inclusive? So to help me discuss this today, as well as all of you, who I do want to be part of the conversation, I'm very pleased to have Nadmi Al-Nasser. He's delivered a number of incredible projects, including the one he's currently working on, which is NEOM, which I think it's like creating an entirely new society. We'll get to you. Really delighted to also be joined by Jonathan Ortmans, the president of the Global Entrepreneurship Network, which connects entrepreneurs, investors, researchers, and policymakers. Judith Williams, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer at SAP. I had the pleasure of getting a sneak preview of what she might talk about today, the other day at Hub Culture. We also have Charles-Edouard Bouet. Hopefully my French wasn't too bad there. The global CEO of Roland Berger. Very involved in digitalization and also has a really interesting view that spans from Asia to Europe. And then we also have somebody whose index kicked off the week this week, Alan Days, the CEO of the Adecco Group in Switzerland. And there's always a couple of reports that come out in Davos, and the Global Competitive Index that kicked off Davos this week, I do think was one of the things that really captured the attention. So just to start, I'd like the panel to tell us what they do, because it's always interesting just to hear from their perspective exactly what you do on a daily basis, but in about a minute. You've got 60 seconds.
Thank you. I would say what I do every day is dreaming, because my job actually is, I'm the engineer or project engineer that his job is to work together in transforming the dream to reality. And if the reality that we're talking about is a real beautiful dream that basically says, we want to live the future now. And that's what NEOM is all about. And when you just think of it, I would say, what an exciting mission. So what do I do every day? I'm just enjoying every minute, every day. Yes, challenging, demanding, frustrating, many times, many minutes. But when you have the whole globe with you in a blended team, that mission of the team is to work together and see how we can create the future today. And you see the globe is coming together to say, let's give it a try. Let's take this dream to where we want to be. After all, NEOM vision is basically, we say NEOM is the land of the future. The land where great minds, best talents in the world will be together to come to that land, addressing the challenges of the world today and tomorrow, and then give the young talents the real opportunity to be the driver for that journey of going to the reality of this dream. That's all I do every day.
Okay, well, simple. Jonathan, how about you?
I spend my days working out how can we make it possible for anyone, anywhere, to start and scale a company. Why? Because in a very diverse and, more importantly, unpredictable and fast-changing world in so many dimensions that we, of course, are all familiar with here in Davos, it'll be entrepreneurs that actually embrace that. They celebrate that. The lack of predictability and the ability to be able to navigate all of these trends that are hitting us all at once. I'm a great believer that entrepreneurs have the ability to be able to do that. So we try to do this in a way of helping the rest of the world rise. We operate in 170 countries. Global Entrepreneurship Network does a whole range of programs, tons of research. We work with policymakers around the world in figuring out how do we create healthier entrepreneurial ecosystems that will allow these diverse and make it much more inclusive for anyone in the world participate in this process of how do you figure out better ways of doing things and how do you do that in a very collaborative and inclusive way.
Judith, you sit at the heart of diversity and software, which is arguably the most important thing we need to be aware of. What do you do every day?
What do I do every day? I think about what I do as expanding opportunity and ensuring that as SAP is building the next generation of business software, we have a diverse workforce and an inclusive environment where people can bring their best selves to work. I also think about how we can ensure that our partners and customers are also thinking about inclusion as they build for the future. And then how do we build the next generation or support the building of the next generation of technology so that we have a diverse ecosystem going forward.
Charles Edouard.
What do I do? What I do is I work on helping our clients, government, companies, and citizens to what we call own the future and harvest the present. But how do I do this? It's being French, running a German company, global, 50 countries, more than 300,000 consultants. So I spend my time, one third of the time, I have to run this company. One third of my time, I'm engaged with clients on projects that will help them to own the future, so I'm getting really involved. And the last third is I'm thinking on the future of work, on technologies, on artificial intelligence, and all of this will shape the future.
Thank you. Alain, if you could tell us what you do, and then introduce for us the index that came out earlier this week, the Global Competitive Index, and some of the high-level points that you found most interesting for the audience today.
Good morning to everybody. Hope you are enjoying your breakfast. What do I do? Together with my 35,000 colleagues in 60 countries, we make the world work for everyone. So the Adecco Group is the global leader in workforce solutions. We are one of the top 10 employers in the world. We put every day at work 2 million people in these 60 countries. We help per year 360,000 people to rebound professionally. We help companies to recruit 130,000 people per year in these 60 countries. Probably will come later, especially on the youth issue, because the majority of our 2 million people are really young people below the age of 26. Now, last Monday we launched the 6th edition of the Global Talent Competitive Index. And what is the Global Talent Competitive Index? It is a study over 129 countries and 90 cities in the world, ranking them according to their ability of attract, retain, and develop talents. And to rank this, we are looking at 61 criteria, again, about attraction, retention, and development of talent. And fortunately or unfortunately, the country of the Adecco Group, Switzerland, is again #1. By the way, Singapore is #2. Scandinavian countries are also in the top 10. But what are the key recipe to become on the top list? The key recipe is the ability to, let's say, to cook a menu of 3 ingredients. First, you need to have very strong, globally reputed university or high school. Best example is in Zurich, you have ETH, or you have in Lausanne, EPFL. And the second so this is very important. Second ingredient is to have close by multinational companies working in close partnership with this university to develop the curriculum, not only the curriculum, but also to develop some kind of work-related experience. Because this multinational will then hire the talent of the schools or the universities, put them at work, and so on. The best example is again Zurich, where you have the 2nd biggest research and development center of Google. Why is Google in Zurich and in Switzerland? Mainly because of ETH and EPFL. Third ingredient is the facilitation from the policymakers and especially the government. And you need either a state or a local state or a city, more and more a city, to really facilitate this ecosystem, the development of the ecosystem, with one new ingredient, which is all kind of incubation. Because more and more, this young talent will enter the professional life by starting companies. And so you need to develop locally, near these universities, you need a good incubation network allowing them to start the company, get support to grow. This is in a nutshell about the Global Talent Competitive Index.
Thank you. So, Charles-Edouard, I heard you speak quite passionately the other day on CNBC about the conflict, if you like, in France, which I know is one of the 3 countries that you tend to move between. There is this conflict between achieving the future and living in the present. Can you tell me what you think the issue is that young people especially are grappling with, but also where you see it from an international perspective? Where do you see what good looks like?
And I think for the young people, they are facing a paradox. On the one hand, 2/3 of them wants to create their company, they want to be entrepreneur, they have aspiration, they are millennials, they want to accelerate things, and they want to give us advice, because we're older and we need advice. They have friends all over the world, and they want to change the world. So that's great. On the other hand, there's a tough job market. And when they get a job, it's difficult. They cannot change the world in 5 minutes. Some of them resign in my company, and some of our clients, after 1 month, they say, "Why are you resigning?" He said, "Because I could not change the world." I said, "You think you're going to change the world after an internship or in 1 month?" It also takes time. One of the big things that I want to share with you is that these people, the 16 to 24, 40% of them feel extremely lonely or lonely. So that's the challenge we have. We have a great, very young, energetic, changing the world, sense of purpose people, on the one hand, for the long run, and they will change the world. On the other hand, we have to tame them, we have to help them, we have to accompany them, because the world is very hostile. And this is not a fairy tale world. And this is the challenge we have, all of us, is change the world, but also help them to navigate in this very difficult world.
As you're designing an entirely new society, from biotech, health, mobility, you're pretty much redesigning everything in NEOM, building a city or almost a country, really, within a country from scratch. How do you think about how to include young people and the constant need to reskill as you do this?
Well, by the way, our mission is to create a country, not a city. There will be many cities within this country. But it goes beyond just building cities or a country. It's building an economy, an independent economy, an economy that's going to be part of the growth of the base economy. Third, we're also, to do that, we're reaching the world, and we're reaching all ages. And believe me, we're addressing younger generation almost more than the experiences we have. And that's because I hear the frustration of the young generation. I hear the complaints. I hear sometimes the confusion. And we want them to be part of this making, because their views count, their challenges to us count, our challenges to them put them into a reality check.
So how do you do that? How do you include them?
Well, first we are creating 16 economic sectors. And in majority of these sectors, they are defined, they are established to address global challenges, whether it is health, whether it's biotech, whether it is education, industry 4.0, all of these things. And that's what attracts this young generation. We say, it's not anymore just reading about it, come and live it with us. Come and live with us how we're going to move to that generation. They get attached, I have to say, passionately, when the challenges we are addressing are global challenges and not local or regional. And that's the reason why we are attracting global young talents. And the most beautiful moments in my job is when I see the blend between all these young global talents and the debates between them, because they are part of the team. They are part of those people who are mapping out the journey. And I keep telling them, I said, look, I live in home with my 3 great daughters who are like everybody else in that age, challenging the world, are not happy, frustrated. We are the generation that is not keeping attention to them and their needs. My philosophy with these 3 daughters is I am there. Do whatever you believe is what you want to do, part of your existence and your contribution to the world. I'll give you everything you need, but you need to settle one day on what you think the best contribution you have to the globe. And I tell you, I'm enjoying that experiment because it's a small sample of the young talents. So we are very keen in NEOM on bringing young talents in general, but young. And we believe our mission also to prepare them, because they are not going to be young talents forever. One day they will be at our age, and then they will have to look at the young talents to come. So first, the message I always join with them is there is a need for mindset change. We have to change our mind on not just complaining, but be part of the solution. Second, there is a need to bridge between the young generation and our generation. We're still young, but I mean, we're not
I feel a lot younger than I look.
So that bridge, I think, is the responsibility of our age. We have to build that bridge. The bridge is not going to happen on its own, and it's not going to be built by the young talents. Young talents are impatient. They just have no time. They complain one day about something, they make a decision next day. And we just need to help them. And that's the beauty of what we do. It's not just building facilities in NEOM. We're building the mix of all these ideas that we discuss every day. And every day we see the future a little bit maybe modified. And we will land on a map. We will land on a picture. But it's the making of the blend of all of these minds.
Okay.
That's what I enjoy most.
Good. Judith, SAP is an incredibly agile company and has really kept up with the changing of the world of work. I want to know what works within SAP that would be useful to think about as companies develop policies to encourage inclusion. We know the world is diverse, but encourage inclusion, and how that constant need to reskill gets put into practice at SAP.
So one of the things that we do is we encourage cross-generational mentorship. And what that means is it's not that the older mentors the younger, it's the mutual mentoring. And so we foster those relationships. And one of the ways that we do that is for some of our technical conferences, we send older, more mature in career talent with our new grads to present at conferences. And that becomes a foundation of an intellectual relationship where they grow and change. So that's one example of how we think about one generation renewing the other. Another thing that we do is we partner with schools in our local environments. Here at Davos, we launched the Global Youth Alliance with 19 other companies. And the goal of that is to ensure that the next generation of talent, regardless of where they are, have the skills that they need to compete in an increasingly technological and digital world. So we have that continuous education and that growth mindset internally. So we offer a lot of programs for everybody in our workforce to continue learning, to renew their skills, and also to be thinking about how we grow and learn together.
Thank you. Jonathan, what about you? What have you seen that really works, and what does the Global Entrepreneurship Network do to foster that?
Yeah, so I mean, I think this cross-generational conversation is really the heart of what's so important. And of course, it is encapsulated in the world of entrepreneurship. I mean, and contrary to what people think, the average age of a US-born tech entrepreneur last year was 39 years old. You know, it's not a 23-year-old person in a garage. And the reason for that is a lot of companies are co-created by co-founders, and you often need a disruptive innovator or shall I say someone that's got a disruptive idea, and you need someone with unique knowledge of the industry, and they come together and they create an innovation. And I think, so I really love this idea that it's not the wise old members of our society who we've often positioned this as mentoring the young people. It's a cross-mentoring relationship. And I think...
And it's not just about how the young people can tell you how to use your phone. It's more than that.
Oh, yeah. And let's be honest here. I mean, I think the important point here is I think we've all experienced impatience.
Yeah.
And and I welcome that because it's like, let's get on with it. By the way, in a lot of our institutions, we have inaction. And we love the fact that a new generation does that. But I'm enormously optimistic about this because if you look at the average young person, and by the way, there's an amazingly talented member of our network over here. So Simona, just, you're a perfect example of this to me. Simona understands AI, which is her professional background. She understands the corporate world, but she's a millennial. She works in a lot of our grassroots communities. She runs our Global Entrepreneurship Week campaigns, not just in one country, but in 3 countries. So if you look at how young people, the opportunity that young people have to be able to lead on this is pretty phenomenal in the sense that they're obviously much more globally connected than we were in that generation naturally. They are very comfortable with operating in multiple cultures and environments, much more globally diverse in that sense. But most importantly, and the one thing we often miss on this for me that we've observed as we've built movements of young people around the world to drive into to change the entrepreneurial culture in countries, is that young people are used to learning through peer networks. We often have these conversations in universities. You say universities is that pinpoint of talent. We're actually looking in the entrepreneurship space, we discovered that it's all, because of this impatience, it's information on demand. So it's like, when I want to know something, I want to know it now. And so I'm going to go into my peer network or into my online resources, and I'm going to find that out. So I certainly think young people have the younger generations have a lot to teach us about how we can do things much more faster and much more efficiently. But the biggest thing for me is, one of the things is a company called Richard Adius, which is involved, I think, in helping Richard, I think, is here today. But one of the things... He's
lurking somewhere.
Richard is lurking here somewhere. But Richard put a great video up on his thing, which inspired me. It was like all examples around the world of how you can't predict anything anymore.
Right.
You can't predict the future. It's all uncertain. And we could all give 50 examples. But one of the things is an entrepreneur stands up and says, this is fantastic, because whenever anybody shakes things up and changes the rules, all of a sudden, I see opportunity. And so as far as I'm concerned, where many of us see fear and many of our less included parts of our society see uncertainty with a sense of intrepidation, I think the entrepreneur says, hey guys, guess what happened? Someone just voted for Brexit. The Financial Times called me actually within an hour of that Brexit vote. I happened to be in Silicon Valley at the time. And they said, what do you think about this? And I just couldn't believe it had happened. But I said, well, look, I represent disruptive entrepreneurs. So as far as I'm concerned, the entrepreneurship community is going to say what was not possible yesterday could be possible tomorrow. And that's because I spend my time with young entrepreneurs and they train me to think that way. Don't think, oh gosh,
disaster.
Think opportunity, think glass half full, think about what we can do with what has happened. And I think if we can continue to capture and leverage that power of young people, and they can capture and leverage our power of maybe saying, slow down, you can't change the world in a 1-month internship. I think if there's a way that we can somehow learn from each other, I think there's a lot to be achieved with that. So just very quickly to answer the last part of your question. So we have 16,000 partners, many of which come from youth organizations around the world. We've built what we call one global entrepreneurial ecosystem. We operate in 170 countries, but we built it through campaigns of young people It's actually an idea that came out of Davos many years ago, Gordon Brown's idea to come up with a 1 week of entrepreneurship in every country. We do 40,000 events all in 1 week in November. And the wonderful thing about that is there's always young people spearheading the infusion of an entrepreneurial culture into traditional environments. And I know there's very many people like Shiv Kemkar here from India and others who've really embraced and worked out how do we empower young people to be that cultural carrier. And we've done it in the entrepreneurship space, and as a result of building all of those communities and movements, we've now got a wonderful group of people who are out there working hard to, frankly, make connections with the kinds of senior corporate types here to work out how they can figure out better ways of doing things and birth the new in many of these new disrupted industries.
Alan, I'd like you to tell us about the CEO for a Month program that you have. I'd also like you to tell us about what do you look for when you're hiring now? Is it not just a good degree at university? What are the skills that you, or the abilities that you look for?
There are many questions in your questions.
I know.
Let's start, because perhaps three different answers. First of all, in a nutshell, looking forward, what do we think it is important for the young people to be successful in the labor market? I would say it's a combination of three things. First, ideally to study in the STEMs area, because these are really the skills in demand. Second, to develop their soft skills, because unfortunately, the education system is not helping or teaching people how to be creative, how to have emotional intelligence, how to develop your empathy, and so on, which will be how to collaborate in team, which are extremely important for the future. And third, we see that there is still today huge youth unemployment. Everywhere in the world, the youth unemployment is at the double rate of the average national unemployment. Everywhere in the world, from the US to Europe and starting now in Asia. You have still in France 17% of the young French having not a job. It's 1 out of 5. And we see that there are 3 exceptions. Germany, Switzerland, Austria. There you have a very low youth unemployment. And what is the recipe behind this is the vocational training. So going forward, because I agree with you, we don't need university and high school anymore for the knowledge. The knowledge is at disposal of everybody. But we need high school to learn what to do with this knowledge, how to develop these soft skills and so on. So the recipe is to have work-based education system, like vocational training, like what we call apprenticeship and so on. We see that where it has been developed since decades, youth unemployment is extremely low because there is an immediate matching between the needs of the companies and what the education system is producing. And immediately, the young people got a job. So this was the first question. Now, the second point is about CO for 1 month, which is related to that. When we talk to the young people, when we talk to our 100,000 customers who are trusting us every day, they are looking for young talent with 20 years experience. Unfortunately, when you are young, you don't have a lot of experience. And so we thought about it and we said, okay, how can we help the young generation to gain experience so that they are becoming more employable? And one of my young colleagues in 2011 from Norway, Anders, developed the concept of CO for 1 month. And the CO for 1 month is giving the opportunity to a young person, whatever the age and so on, whatever the background, to shadow or local CEO during 1 month, just to gain a wonderful experience to really shadow him. In the meantime, when we started in 2011 in Norway, in the meantime, we are doing this in 49 countries. We had last year 205,000 candidates. We selected the 49, but in the meantime also we are providing to all of them different experiences because you can shadow also the CFO, the CHRO, and so on. So it's a great opportunity. And then we have a second competition, which is the global CEO for 1 month. And one of them, after again competition and so on, will have the opportunity or the nightmare to work with me 1 month. And
what was? Has it happened yet?
It has happened. Yeah.
And what was it like?
It is 35,000 kilometers per month. It is 60% traveling. It is a lot of meeting, but very a lot of interaction. Fascinating jobs because they have a great program. And after that, it's a wonderful, I would say, power card to enter the labor force. And that's really our objective. So to gain experience, because this is key for the young people to gain experience, to know what they want, what they don't want. And we have to help them to gain this experience to make their choice and build their career.
Are they learning anything from you? I'm sorry, I phrased it that. No. Are you learning anything from them? Is
exactly.
What I'm trying to ask. Yeah.
That's why this is for me a fascinating month because yes, for sure they are learning a lot by participating to everything. But for me, I have somebody I can question. I say, but how do you look at this? How do you? What is your judgment? What would you decide if you were in my place? So personally, I really play the game. It is a wonderful, refreshing month for me every year to be with these young people.
Charles, I've seen you scribbling some notes down there. I'd like you to respond to what you've heard. Would you like to have a young CEO alongside you for a month?
I'd be happy to. I mean, I have a lot of young people around me every day. No, I think you're right. I mean, one of the things we just said in this panel is we have to find the balance. We have to find the balance between this energy, this youth, and, as you said, the knowledge. You know, to become a very great surgeon, it takes maybe 15, 20 years. To become an AI specialist, it's not because you study, it's because you've been doing 10, 15 years, 20 years. I think this is the balance we need to find. So when I'm recruiting, when I'm dealing with people, I'm trying to, as you are, we learn so much from them because they have a fresh mind. You know, nothing is a problem. Everything is a business opportunity, as was said before. But they need to have a balance. They need to understand the value of time, the value of real friendships, the value of your mind just dreaming and thinking without a purpose. I mean, I don't know everyone in this room, but my life is not purpose-driven every minute. Huh? Because otherwise I would be first crazy, and secondly, I would have no life. Yeah. So I think this is what I was scribbling is, we have to really anchor this balance.
How do you do that at a company which there's a lot of travel, there's a lot of stress, there's obviously the need to be on a device quite a lot. How do you encourage your young people, your employees, to take it easy from time to time and leave time for the other things that are important?
I think we're encouraging them first to take time with themselves. We're encouraging them to take time with others. We are suggesting them to take a lot of lunch with colleagues and friends, you know, to never eat alone, you know, on your screen. We're also trying to teach them the value of time, and there's a very interesting philosopher, German philosopher called Hartmut Rosa, and I would suggest you to read about him, who writes the value of time. And he said, time, you know, Karl Marx, because he's a communist thinking, Karl Marx was right, everything has been monetized, including time, and it's true now we're living at a very fast pace. But what he said is, you have two ways of using time. You can either consume it like a product, or you can harvest it. And when you are meeting people, you are really harvesting time. You're exchanging, you're growing, and your brain is growing, and this is proven. You know, I'm working a lot on AI and the link with the neuronal networks. All of us, after this meeting, our brain will have been changed, for good or worse, but our brain will have been changed because a neuronal connection will have changed. And your brain changes differently when you're interacting with the machines or with yourself, gaming, than when you are interacting with others. So I'm advocating a balance between the real world and the virtual world. And another topic I want to throw to the audience is the world is becoming more and more virtual. As we speak, 120, 200 million people are playing on Fortnite. And this is the virtual world. Maybe you are playing.
Including my son.
That means that in the world of tomorrow, for all of us as leaders, we'll have to find this balance between the real world and the virtual world, because this virtual world will exist. And for the young generation, virtual and real is totally mixed. And for us, as the older generation, even though I play games, like some of you maybe in this room, even though you will not tell it, this is very important. So this, for me, the word is balance. Balance between short-term and long-term. Balance between experience and knowledge and youth and creativity.
So we're going to open to the audience for questions. So if I can get some help in putting a microphone with somebody who has a question. Before we do that, I do want Jonathan to tell us about something, a new initiative that's being launched. What's the first thing you're doing?
Well, you put this question about how, because many of us can agree upon a lot of these trends. Before I do that, I just want to make sure that we, at some point in this conversation, come back to something that one of you said about the younger generation is lonelier. And I'd love to, if we can, at some point come back to that, because I know we often talk about it in the context of they're lonelier because of technology, but I wonder whether or not they're lonelier because of what you've talked about in terms of, I love this idea of encourage them to spend more time interacting. Maybe that's more rudimentary, but it'd be something. We're very proud at the Global Entrepreneurship Network to be announcing actually today in Davos one new initiative which will help engage a lot of young people around the world with their experienced peers. And that is that we are starting a challenge to reach 100,000 young people around the world and invite them to participate in a virtual and live accelerator and pitch competitions in all the countries that we operate. Around innovating in specific industries and around specific new challenges. And so it's going to be called the Entrepreneurship World Cup. We're very proud of it, and we're very proud of the fact that we're going to see this happen at the kind of pace that young people like to do things, which is we announce it today and they want to get on with it tomorrow. Right away, but we're doing this in partnership. Jen is in partner with the Misk Global in seeing this happen across the world. So I know, Shiv, your foundation is going to be involved in this, but we invite other companies, NGOs, and other organizations that would like to be a part of this. I hope that you'll let Misk know or let me know, and we'd certainly like to have you a part of this important effort. As I say, we can do, I think some of these programs we decide to do are some of the ways that we learn and some of the ways that we can ensure that we include more people. At GEM, we think of inclusion in a global fashion. How do we make it possible to remove the barriers from people in parts of the world? We call it the rise of the rest, where there's not been so much opportunity, but maybe there's plenty of talent. So we hope you'll all, on behalf of Misk and Jen, be part of the Entrepreneurship World Cup. So thanks for letting me mention that. So
great. I know we have a question here. Oh, back there, and then at this table. Have you got the mic?
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning. Well, I wanted to take the opportunity, since there is no young person on the panel, and I wanted to challenge one of the ideas.
What are you saying?
Wow.
No offense, please. I wanted to challenge this idea that millennials are impatient, and I don't think they want to quit after a 6-month internship because they didn't do anything during these 6 months. I think it's more that they don't see that after these 6 months, after 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, they will have the chance to have this impact. And many times we look up in the hierarchy and look at the people who are leading and ask, what have you done to change the world? And you're here and you manage this company, but you had no impact. What's the reason why I should also, continue on the 6 months internship?
Great.
And move along. And I'm sorry, but having lunch with your colleagues and not in front of the computer is not really being outside and then having an impact in the world.
Okay, so a challenge from the youth to the panel. Would you like to respond, Charles?
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just giving example, first of all, that you should interact with other people. So let's make no mistake, okay? I don't think that everyone can change the world, all the time. Huh? We have to understand that the world will change, and we are going into a great transformation. And this great transformation needs to be done together with older generations, like we've done in the last 2,000 years. And sorry to be a bit tough, but we have to work together. There's no kind of for the young changing the world and the old being useless. We have to, what we call at Roland Berger, to be re-entrepreneurs. We have to use the world, which is the existing assets, the culture, the value of this world, what we have built, the kingdom of, and entrepreneurship to build a better world. And we should not oppose each other, the panel, because there's no young people with the young people. We really have to balance and work together. And that's my message to the world. Thank you.
Okay. I know Mr. Nasser. And then if you can speak, and then at the end.
Yeah, I mean, we need also to remember that, we use the words entrepreneurship, innovation, all of this as if it's new. We all lived this 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago at a different shape and a different model. And many of the people sitting here have gone through a lot of challenging career, up and down. And many of us here have succeeded, and they are where they are because they lived through that journey. And I think that experience by itself needs to be always reminded, because the new generation are going to be in our places 20, 30 years ago. And then they will be maybe sitting here talking about the future and the innovation. And so we need, again, I believe in bridging, and I believe in reality. I think we need to help the new generation saying our experience and how things were different, but the same. And I think that story usually gets lost.
So how do you do that at NEOM? How do you have a lot of young people working with you? Do you encourage universities and companies to work together? How does it work?
Okay, I'll give you maybe two examples. One of them is with NEOM, and one of them with KAUST, King Abdullah University of Science and Technology. University created 10 years ago or so. So on that one, I remember we established day one a program, we call it SRSI, Saudi Research Institution. And all that about is bringing students at 11th grade, 15 years old, and put them through that program, working with our global chief scientist in KAUST in their research as if they are young junior scientists. And we were watching how they go around this. How can they behave as scientists? We call them, you are the future scientists. But the interesting part of that is that was the step one of a 10-year journey. Many of those are today PhD graduates. Some of them are faculty in Saudi universities, and some of them are postdocs in MIT and Harvard. And we asked them question that first day they joined. What do you think you want to do? What are your dreams? And I tell you, everything is videoed. Everything is on a camera, so it's not like notes. And we asked them the day they came on the stage to get their PhD certificate after moments of their death. So what is it you want to do now? That's what you said 10 years ago. And it's amazing. I tell you, it's amazing how a 10-year journey has evolved, transformed great ideas with no constraints to greater ideas with better, but with a greater constraints. The change is the confidence, maturity. I love your idea is this has to come with time. There is experience to be gained. So that's one model. And I'm sure this is the reality. Now we go back to NEOM. Around 40 employees in NEOM today. These are the 40 Saudi boys and girls joined NEOM with a degree program. That's all they have is a certificate graduating from universities. And we put them part of a group who are painting the future. This is not a project just to build something. And I sat with them many times and I said, look, one thing you need to remember, you are the most fortunate boy in Saudi Arabia to be in NEOM, or girl, or whatever. You better take this very serious. This is not a job. This is a dream to be reality for you. Forget about NEOM, forget about Saudi Arabia. There is, I told them, I can assure you, there is maybe 20 million Saudis want to be in your spot because they want to be part of NEOM. You get it. don't miss this opportunity. Our job, we will give you responsibilities, we will give you demands that will bring you almost to collapse because the demand is going to be huge. Take it and reduce 10 years of experience into 2. You can do that. We will help you doing it. I am very optimistic of the response of these young. When they are put on the spot, I mean, not all of them, but most of them, I can see the change happening overnight. So I believe in the model of we can reduce or optimize the number of years to gain the experience. It's doable, but I can assure you it's not going to go down to 0.
Okay.
And so I'm something between what you said and what I see and witness in NEOM.
I want to make sure the audience has a chance to speak. We've got here, I do want to hear from a woman, and I know that Mina has a question afterwards. And then there's a gentleman over there. So if we could get 3 questions, and then I'm going to get the panel to respond.
Good morning, Yunus Ringana. I'm an ambassador of Womanity Foundation. We believe in a world where all women and men enjoy equal and full social rights. Just to bounce into, I think, a question I have is when you land in Zurich Airport, there's an ad that said the 60 is the new 40. And I think Picasso said youth has no age. And I think we're all young here in this room, and it's a mindset. So I just want to know from the audience, from the panelists, what's the perspective of redefining what is young? Because we always get into a bracket of an age, and I think youth has really no age, like Picasso said. So I'd love to hear from them.
Great. And Mina?
Yeah, hi. Mina Al-Arabi, Editor-in-Chief of The National in Abu Dhabi. I wanted to ask about retaining talent among young people, because I think it's less about impatience, but I think that the workforce has changed where people feel that they need to be promoted. They need to show on their LinkedIn profile that by the age of 28, they've held 5 different positions. So there is this pressure in being employable and what that means. And so I find that retaining some of the most brilliant young people, even for me, in a newspaper or different organizations, is because they feel the urge that they need to be promoted or they need to move somewhere else in order to get that promotion, because that's what the industry seems to be pushing them, especially in the creative industry. So if you could comment on that. And I guess part of it is also, we keep talking about young people also because they have skills that I don't have and those older than me don't, because there are certain jobs that have been born with them, especially if they're digital natives.
Exactly. Okay. Judith, maybe you could hang on for 1 second. One more question over here, and then we're going to come and okay, there, and then a question here, and then we're going to come back to the panel.
Hi, Philip. I'm a global shaper from Beijing. I support work around mental health. I lead a company around speech AI, and I also advise Sweden on their work to advance research in speech AI to advance humanitarian purposes. So my thesis is that the future that we're working in by 2035, 40% of current jobs will be replaced by automation AI. And if we look at that trend, right, I feel like, yes, capitalism is inevitable and that resources are going to be more concentrated than ever. I mean, in the last year, right, we had a few companies reaching $1 trillion in valuation. So given these trends, right, I was just wondering from the panel if you guys have thought about how resources can be redistributed, that whether it's about trying to advance new forms of entrepreneurship or whether it's about like, are we leveraging technologies in different ways, more creative ways to look at how we can give back to society? Thank you.
Thank you. A question from Judith here, and then I'm going to get the panel to respond.
Hi, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for all these amazing and insightful comments. I'm Judith Arenas from APCA Worldwide, and I wanted to follow up on a question which I think all of you will have some perspective, certainly from your perspective and inclusion, and certainly I'd love to hear what NEOM is doing around this. We've all been talking about the Sustainable Development Goals, and we know that at the core of it is leaving no one behind. And we've been talking about youth, which is obviously extremely important. The issue of gender has come up, but I also wanted to find out more about how are we including those sectors of youth, the disabled, indigenous, those that have less opportunities, to make sure that we truly move forward with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Let's start at the end there and just move across. Been some great questions.
Yeah. Just to reflections about the questions. We are the fifth great place to work in the world. The Adecco Group is the fifth great place to work in the world among 7,500 multinationals. We are also the fifth great place to work in Europe. And when I looked at these results, I say, wow, how did we achieve that? And I think we did achieve that because for the 35,000 people, it is individually important to be a great place to work. And when we are discussing about the youth and so on, I think it is important that you co-create the future. I take one example. We had to redesign we moved from headquarters, and yes, it is forbidden to eat at the desk. It is forbidden. So people have to go into the canteen if they want to eat, take even a normal coffee and so on, just to create interaction. It is 100% open space. I am together with the teams. I have just a desk, wonderful electrical desk, but I have a desk. It's 100% open space with wonderful booths and so on, if you want to isolate with 2 and 2. But all of this, by the way, there is no single plastics.
Single-use plastic.
No bottle plastic. No, it's everything fluid and so on with the new system we have. And this, it has been a co-creation together with the people. So I believe strongly that the future will be everything about co-creation. People don't want to be consulted. They don't want to vote. No, they want to co-create. That's point one. Second, regarding promotion of young people and so on. You have here in front of me Anne-Sophie. And Anne-Sophie has been CEO for 1 month, 2 years ago? 2 years ago from Germany. And she joined us. 2 years later, she's still there, so that's the good news. And she was not only a CEO for 1 month for Germany, but she has been in the top 5 worldwide. And then she decided to join us and made different jobs. I think you are the second jobs, I think, inside the company. So we could give her the floor, perhaps. You can be the voice of the young generation. If there is a mic, let's ask her if it is important to have a multi-job on your LinkedIn.
No, I think that's not quite the point. Also, it's not about changing the world every day or every moment. I think the idea is not how much time neither I spend at work. I've heard that this week oftentimes, or I have heard about the attitude of the youth towards work. I don't care how many hours I work, but on what I spend them, right? And with that, I don't only change to company or the future alone, but at least a sense of contribution. I think that's the key. And this can be in a mentorship, in a team, in a small or big scale, but at least that you see somehow, even if it's an Excel list you're updating, what is the why behind and why am I sitting here and proceeding with that?
Thank you, Anne-Sophie.
Alain. Sorry, Charles, moving along.
Maybe I answer one of the questions, which is in this, how you retain people and you grow them. I think that I call it the triangle. First thing is people want to feel they are in a company which is contributing, which is growing, which is winning, which is, they can tell their parents, their friends, what we're doing is great, and the company keeps moving. So that's the goal of the leader, to keep this. The second thing is you need to feel that what you're learning, what you're doing, is making you more employable. That every 1 minute I've added at NEOM is worth 30 minutes I would have added somewhere else, and 3 days I would have added somewhere else. So we need to keep making the job interesting, or also the value of what they've been learning important. And last but not least, this family feeling, the feeling of open space, the feeling of sharing, the feeling of co-creation. And I think that if you do the 3 things together, then first, money will flow into your company in the middle, and secondly, people will stay, and people will grow the company. That's how I see the development of talent.
Great. So just a time check. We've got 5 minutes till we need to wrap. But I do want to hear some thoughts from Judith as well, just responding to these questions about co-creation, about whether we need to be promoted. Give us your thoughts there.
So I think it's really interesting, the discussion about young people, especially about millennials, because I'm old enough to remember the discussion about Gen X and all of the types of claims about millennials were also made about Gen X. So a lot of this is cohort effect. young people tend to want to have a lot of new experiences. They want to be valued. They want to change the world. This doesn't change as you get older. We still want those things, but life changes our context. And so we negotiate our work in very different ways. And so what we try to do is remember that all of us want in our work, we want to have autonomy, we want to have mastery, and we want to have purpose. That comes from Dan Pink. And autonomy means that we want to have the independence to manage our own work. This is true regardless of which generation we're from. How it expresses might be a bit different. We want to actually feel like we can attain mastery. We want to get better. We want to see that kind of improvement. And that can be in promotion. That's a kind of artificial step that lets us know that we are moving. But it can also be in terms of recognition. So in addition to thinking about how do we have promotion, we also have recognition programs. And we have something at SAP called Appreciate, so that anyone can recognize someone else. So if you work with someone on a project and they do a good job, you can give them an award that's either a monetary award or just recognition so that their manager knows, that everybody knows. And we find that it's not only the promotion, it's the valuing of the work. It's the appreciation that really keeps people wanting to work as part of our culture. And then the last piece is purpose. We are a purpose-driven company. And when you have a mission that is expansive, that is connected to the world, people commit to it, and they think that they can have a long-time career. And also this idea of connection. I used to work at Google, and one of the interesting things at Google was we were heads down eating at our desks all the time. And in fact, if we walked around the hallways in Google, like we would hold our laptops, so we would be like this, walking around. And then when I got to SAP, I was in Waldorf, our headquarters, and my EA had put on my calendar every single day lunch. And so someone would come and say, okay, we're going to lunch now. And it is important because of that kind of culture and that sense of inclusion and that sense that you are, again, valued, that you can contribute. And that really makes all the difference in your culture and why people will want to stay. And then also how they'll want to innovate. And then the last point about the AI question, we talk a lot about the intelligent enterprise at SAP. We talk a lot about machine learning. We talk a lot about AI. But we don't think about it as the robots are coming for your jobs. Right? We know that there are many jobs now that didn't exist 10, 20, 30 years ago. The same is going to be true. But the question is, how will you work with technology in the future? Will you be a maker? Right? Will you be a user? What is your place in society? So I think we need to get beyond this idea that technology is going to do something to us, because technology is something that we create and we use. And we just need to be thoughtful about how we do that.
Time is waiting for no woman at this point. I do know that, Alain, you do need to go. If you want to slip off quietly while we hear our final, and Charles as well. No, you're okay. If we can hear some final two concluding remarks from these guests, then we'll let you all get on with the next part of your day. Jonathan?
Well, first of all, I want to say I've learned several things. I've actually written 3 things down, so I want to thank everybody. I've walked away with some insights, which is always very encouraging on a panel. But just on one thing that I think we need to remember about, you said for 2,000 years, we've had this. We've always in our there is such a thing as age, and in our younger forms, and we do think and operate differently, whether that's to do with our politics, whether it's to do with, you said, things happen to you as you get further in life. I mean, for a lot of people, it was just adding the responsibilities of being a parent or some of the other dynamics of being in a community. But the one thing I think we should make sure that we shouldn't underestimate is the value of experience. If any of us go in for heart surgery, you really do want to have someone that's done that surgery 3,000 times. It's not their first time.
Disruptive surgery.
I think when we become better listeners and when we allow our institutions to inherit, shall I say, or to encompass more important, inclusive, and engaging priorities for our society, I think we should also hold dear the value of experience. Having said that, I also want to echo just the last point, just about inclusion and also about technology. So very quickly, on the inclusion, one of the things that all of our research has told us, and I also work for the Kauffman Foundation in the United States, is that we are very focused on our ecosystem building work around inclusivity. Not just because we're a philanthropy, we think it's the right thing to do, but because of the fact that actually, in addition to connectivity and density, inclusiveness is actually the bigger driver to innovation. Yeah. And I think it's one of the things we discovered in the startup, the grassroots startup communities. You obviously at a more corporate level. So we need to understand that what we're talking about today is actually good business. It's not just the right thing to do. It's actually the smartest thing to do. And I also want to echo
briefly
the challenge to the younger generation to help us figure out how to make sure that AI does, that we stay in control of technology and we use it as a tool to improve our lives rather than shrivel up in fear of the loss of our jobs. But I think that's something that we can gain a great deal of help in our generations.
We're at time. I do want to give you exactly 60 seconds to give your concluding thoughts.
Okay, let me try. I'll go quickly through messages rather than reflection on what I said before. Talent. I would call for one day where we don't need to say young talent and talent, because young talent and then talent doesn't make sense to me. Talents is talents. And even young is being redefined. Young 20 years ago is not young today. I mean, the range is different, and we see people at different. So that's one. Another message is education and knowledge. We talk a lot about education, which is the must for all of us. But we don't emphasize much more on knowledge. To me, knowledge is what counts at the end of the day, and knowledge will have to be based on education, but it's putting education on the spot. So we need always to call on knowledge and how knowledge is coming. One of the guys talked about retention, and I think even retention needs to be redefined. What is a retention as an issue that we need to talk about anymore or worry about? Is moving between jobs after 2-3 years is a shame, or is it an advantage? Different people see it different way. I would not worry in my company about retention. I think people will stay and work and continue enjoying it if there is a solid vision, mission, and a purpose.
Okay.
And when time comes, people will just move on.
Okay.
And that's what NEOM is all about. Before I finish, I'm inviting everyone in this room. Honestly, if they are interested to join us, come and visit us in NEOM. Those that are interested, we will make that happen. I'm committed.
All right, I'm coming. I'm on my way. Now, just like young people, old people like me need recognition, I'd love you to give your recognition of the fantastic panel we've had.
Thank you.
Thank you.